feel like it's.
Oh, thanks. Good to go.
I will call the March 25th Planning Commission meeting to order.
29.
What?
Yeah, it's 20.
Yes.
Oh, that's
The
when,
minutes.
that's when Preston wrote this memo. Tricky, Preston, very tricky. And introduce the first and only item, which is an approval of the replat to combine two.
Roll call.
Okay, sorry. There seems to be an issue.
No. Well, I don't have a mic to do roll call. I had to mute it.
Oh. What's wrong?
I don't have a. I
Oh,
don't
the
have a
speaker,
mic.
the speaker's right here in the middle.
Oh, okay, so I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Emelson? Franz? Here. Lisk?
Here.
Meyer?
Here.
Nelson?
Here,
Mayor Clark? And Chairperson Montague.
Here. Now, I will introduce the first and only item, which is approval of a replat to combine two separate parcels into one parcel. Portion of lots 11 and 12 and lot 13, 14, and 15 in block 34, town of Ridgway. Of 185 and 195 North Lena Street. The southwest corner of intersection of North Lena Street and Clinton Street. Historic Business District. Current use is historic firehouse and vacant. And the applicant is here, Patrick O'Leary. And I will let TJ take it from here and tell us what's going on.
Excellent. Well, good evening all. So as mentioned, this is a replat to essentially combine two parcels into one. Just some background information because there's been a lot going on in this parcel. So the replat is part of a redevelopment project known as the Firehouse Mixed Use Project, which will result in the current historic firehouse being incorporated into a mixed use development, including residential and commercial uses. As part of that redevelopment process, several town applications and processes have been approved. The Planning Commission and or Town Council have approved the following requests for this property. First, it's been allowed for a reduction of 3 on-site commercial parking spaces required to only require 2, right? So they were required 5, reduced it by 3, to now only require 2, plus to be able to be allowed to pay a fee in lieu to provide those parking spaces off-site. Get into it maybe a little bit later, but those are for the commercial required parking spaces, not the residential. The residential are provided on site. Second, to increase the allowed building height to 41 feet. Third, to allow a building over 15,000 square feet. And fourth was to allow a patio, patio seating on the sidewalk within the street right of way. So those are the past approvals, if you will. Town staff has also preliminarily reviewed the building permit application for the project, along with full plan sets for the proposal. This replat is required because the proposed building spans 2 parcels and the municipal code does not allow buildings to cross property lines. Combining these properties is required in order for staff to allow the issuance of the building permit. Of note, the proposed building has been substantially reduced in size. The northern portion, reduced in size from the original discussion in those other approvals. That northern portion of the property used to have a 3-story element that was pushed right against the property lines, right up against that quarter. That portion has been removed, and it's now an outdoor covered patio seating kind of space to support the restaurant. So the applicant wishes to combine parcels 1 and 2, so 1 being lots 11 and 12, kind of that northern portion, and parcel 2 being the southern 3 lots. If approved, the newly combined parcel would be 0.39 acres, and currently the parcels to be combined are owned by 2 separate entities. Parcel 1 is owned by Stephen Chevalier.
Chevalier.
Um,
Kathy Chevalier.
And parcel 2 is owned by Firehouse Investment Real Estate LLC. The applicant has submitted the hearing application, associated fees, the final plat, and other required support materials for the public hearing to the town. The property and hearing have been noticed and posted in accordance with the Ridgway Municipal Code. So, moving on to the fun stuff, the land uses. The subject property is currently home to the historic firehouse and other ancillary buildings. Per the plans that have been provided, the historic structure will be incorporated into the overall structure and expanded in multiple directions. As mentioned prior, the applicant seeks to develop a mixed-use structure that houses both commercial and residential uses, which are appropriate in the HB, historic business zone district. While some site improvements will be required, adjacent infrastructure is installed in the public right-of-way, such as water, sewer utilities, sidewalk, and the roadways are all installed and constructed. Lastly, the subject property is flat with no significant natural resources or impacts, natural environmental impacts. The project includes 6 residential long-term rental units, which are to be rented at market rate. Development is not intending to include any affordable housing units at this time. If the units are to be sold, a condominium plat would have to be approved by the town. So it's all anticipated to be under one ownership at this time. The project also proposes commercial uses, including a restaurant, greenhouse, and office space. It is our understanding that this is not fully inclusive of all the uses that the applicant originally presented when going through some of those other elements. It's just been kind of coming up that maybe there's some original uses that were proposed that are not in the current proposal. That's making some sense. And it could be because of the reduction in size. Excuse me. So the dimensional standards, section 7315A of the Ridgway Municipal Code sets forth the required dimensional standards which shall be met for various land uses within each zone district. A table identifying the required standards for the HB district, the amount provided based on the initial review of the building permit was provided in the staff report. Preston has it pulled up on the screen. All dimensional standards are able to be met with the replat. So obviously that's a criteria for the plat. The proposed development and all on-site parking will be accessed from the alley that abuts the southern property line. The front door of the commercial uses will be from Lima Street, so the current front door to the firehouse. The proposed parking garage will have 10 spaces of dedicated residential parking with the following. So that's where the residential will be, the parking garage. On December 3rd, 2019, the Planning Commission approved variance to reduce the required number of on-site parking spaces. So that, as I mentioned, reduced the number of required parking spaces from 5 to 2. And then section 739E4D of the Ridgway Municipal Code allows a fee of $3,000 to be paid to the town for spaces that are not going to be provided on site but be off. And so that fee of $6,000 will be required to be paid by the town, by the applicant to the town, sorry, prior to building permit issuance. So as far as utilities, all connections are proposed to tap into the existing town water and sewer service located in North Lena Street. Utility connection design and installation will be reviewed, approved, and inspected through the building permit and encroachment permit processes. The property has been posted and proper notification has been completed by the town. And as of drafting the staff report and as of this evening, I don't believe that any public comments have been received. Karen? So with all of that, staff recommends that the planning commission recommend the town council approve the firehouse replat with the following condition. 1, both properties shall be transferred to one ownership prior to recording. And that's all that I have. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'm confused on the parking. Just trying to make sure I got my head wrapped around that. So there's a parking garage accessible from the alley that will provide parking for residents.
Correct.
And there are 3 more spaces provided for commercial use.
No, so based on the square footage calculation for commercial, they're required to have 5 parking spaces.
Right.
They got a variance to reduce that down to 2.
So wouldn't that mean 9,000
That was my question.
instead of 6,000?
No, because the variance, so now instead of being required to have 5 spaces, they're only required to have 2.
I think it's 3.
Three.
Why
Is
is
it?
it 3?
They're required to have 3. So I have this backwards in here.
I think maybe
Oh, no,
in
you're
your
right.
text, you actually read the code. I think it says that there's at least 3 have to be there. And we're reducing this by 2, so that's where you're getting 6,000. So I think your 6 is right, but there's supposed to be 3 or something like that. Maybe I've got that.
Something doesn't add up.
Something's
I don't know how it's supposed to be.
something's a little wonky on that one, for at least for me to get my
Just
head
the
around.
math.
Well, so the code says $3,000 per space paid in lieu. So we're saying that there are 2 required spaces. So 3,000 times 2 is 6,000.
But wouldn't they be paying for the ones that they're not required to have?
No.
No, because they-
They've reduced the 3 spaces and afforded the applicant or property owner the ability to pay the fee in lieu for the remaining.
So there's no parking spaces being provided.
For the
Commercial.
Commercial,
Yes.
that.
Yeah, so what the variance does in essence is change the code requirement.
Yep.
Correct.
Got it.
The
Does town have a plan for accommodating additional parking? Or is it just going to be in the downtown district? Will
I
report
suspect
that.
it's just gonna be absorbed in the downtown on-street parking. Unless,
Right, that was part of the conversation back in March of 2020. There was no specific plan to lineate.
Okay,
And between this and then the bank building, we're now developing an in lieu fund that we can potentially build a parking lot or a parking garage or something.
Yeah, those
That's
funds
what
are
it's-
earmarked for something specific. Remember, it's addressed on
yeah,
the staff.
that's
report.
actually right there. For the acquisition and construction of public parking facilities to serve the historic business zone district.
so that was my question, is whether there was something in the works for
I don't-
accommodating.
To the best of my knowledge, there's not a plan, but there is a fund that we've been collecting, right?
Right, and I suspect that fund is not,
It's not
is
substantial.
not substantial.
Like that 15 million.
We, once it starts to fill up, we can certainly put a plan together.
So we could provide parking maybe over in Uray and then people could take a bus to the historic district.
A gondola, actually.
I had a question. You said that the 3-story was reduced on the corner. Is that eliminating the height variance? Is the height variance elsewhere?
The height variance is elsewhere. Preston, maybe if you can scroll down to the, I believe it's, depending on what that's, you have,
Last slide.
the very last page has kind of the latest schematic. It's a 3D model.
It's just that pyramid, right? Am I wrong?
The greenhouse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Whoa.
so it's gonna be the bottom side of it actually. It actually goes the rooftop terrace.
Anyone know how to ship this in Dropbox? This is it, right? This is
Yep.
the-
Yeah, so it's hard to see on this one, but there's also an elevator shaft that comes up on that southern portion. So the variance is still needed. And there's also slight slope from the west to east. Where it's warranted. And I can pull up.
And is the firehouse existing building required to stay intact? It looks like it from this drawing.
I don't know if it was required to stay intact, but it is staying intact.
As a historic.
Does anyone have any other specific questions at the moment, or should we open it up to the applicant?
I have a question. This is Jennifer. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So TJ, I just had a question. I was trying to go back to that meeting that we had in December of 2019. And was that part of the preliminary plat that we approved? Is that correct? Those 3 variances that it's connected to?
No, they were agenda items themselves. Maybe
Yeah,
press.
so Jennifer, all that went before planning commission were standalone variance and variance requests and a conditional use request. This project has not gone through the subdivision procedure, so there was no preliminary plat submittal or anything to that effect. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just kind of confused because in this one, it says that we're replatting to a final plat. Or am I mistaken on that?
That's a really good question and good point. Replat in the code, I'm stealing your thunder, I apologize. Replat in the code points to the submittal requirements and performance standards of a final plat. So when someone submits an application to replat parcel, they essentially have to follow the final platting process. If that makes any sense at all.
The one thing I would just add is that this technically, the 2 lots have been quote unquote subdivided. So it's a replat of the 2 parcels that we're looking at.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that explanation.
It's a little bit more odd when we start talking about kind of Ridgway original plat. When you have lots that are on parcels and trying to combine them all, it gets a little bit confusing for sure.
And my understanding is that we have approved this before. What the reason that we're here tonight is the fact that to get a building permit, they cannot have separate ownership. And that this evening is, as we've heard, is to allow that to happen.
That is correct.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't have a lot to say because I think it's fairly simple and straightforward, but I thought I'd first start out by saying, I apologize for bringing you all down here this evening for this replat. In spring break week, right? I get a sense that's why there isn't a lot on the agenda. I'm Patrick O'Leary. I live at 182 North Juniper Road up on Log Hill. And I am the managing member of Firehouse Investment Real Estate, LLC. I'm also the authorized agent by way of the documentation required in this process For Steve and Kathy Chevalier, they have certified that in our submission. Steve and Kathy were going to be coming, but they were delayed because of snowstorms coming back out of Moab. So they won't be here tonight. But I think you guys, as you talked through it, pretty much arrived at the right conclusions. And the reality of this is the code does require that the plat amendment be in final form by the time the permit is drawn. And that's something Preston made me aware of probably 5 weeks ago now or so, just timely enough that we were able to request to be on the agenda tonight. And we hustled and got our application in. It was always our intent to follow the representations I made back in December of 19, that we would be one unified property and one unified owner. I also represented way back when, December of 19 and March of 2020, that that we would, at the end of the project, be submitting a request to the town of Ridgway for condominium subdivision. Because my arrangement with the Chevaliers is to exchange their land being contributed to the development upfront at the prior to in completing the transaction prior to the permit making and being drawn, and that would be in exchange for a base core and shell ready for finish condominium in the project. And so that did change when we changed back in spring of last year, when I decided not to build on the northern lots now, primarily due to the escalation of construction costs. They'll probably never be as low as they were last summer. However, I had to scale the project back a bit. So the Chevaliers will be accommodated in the construction of the mixed-use development on the original parcels owned by the Firehouse Investment Real Estate LLC. So it is as you guys have characterized, and I see it as the simple reunification of two separate parcels in subdivision in the historic business district that's been around for more than a century. And I appreciate all the help that we got from the town staff as we hustled to get our application in. So I will ask if you all have any questions of me.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned that you're going to turn this into a condominium. Is that right? Or that there's
No,
that one of them is going to be a
the third
condominium?
floor, there will be 2 condos.
Okay.
They will be market rate condominiums, and consistent with the town's long-term strategic plan seeking income inequality in our housing. We also have we have 6 units in total residential. 2 are market rate on the top floor, and the other 4 are on the second level, and they are intending to be workforce housing that will follow the affordable housing guidelines. Okay, does that make sense? And then primarily all of the first floor and the greenhouse are part of a hospitality initiative, restaurant, event spaces, and the like.
Okay. I was just a little confused on that because you mentioned the condos. And I'd seen the long-term rentals in here. And so
Yeah.
the condos will sell, and then the second floor units. Will be
Yes, the condos are on the third level,
Right.
and there are 4 for rent affordable housing units.
Okay.
on-
Okay.
on the
Just
second.
because of clarification.
Yep.
All referenced here was the long-term rentals. So thank you.
Any others?
I do want to clarify on that piece. All say, and TJ might have to help me, the units will have to go through a condominiumization platting process subsequent to this process. So if that makes sense. So right now, there will be individual saleable units. Right?
Okay.
So just,
Correct, as we currently stand.
right. I just want to make that clear.
As we near the completion of core and shell is when we will begin that process. so that we can meet the market. And there are only 2 condos on that level. And one of them is already fully committed, so.
Okay. Cool.
So the legal transaction will be completed that the property is all owned by the firehouse before you can pull a building permit, is that right?
Correct. And we do understand that, and we will be able to accomplish that. And I think this plat had all of the various signature blocks necessary for town of Ridgway, all the other parties that must sign off, including the Chevaliers.
So I think if I can speak for Jennifer and myself, we were interested in the project and weren't on this commission when it was approved. So basically, we're seeing this for the first time, but it's pretty clear that that's not what we're here to discuss or evaluate or negotiate. We are basically here to say, yes, you can recombine those 2 lots.
Yeah, it's the 2 parcels. Essentially, what we're doing is eliminating a private property line between the 2 parcels. And by doing so, I am completing my option with the Chevaliers, and that transaction will be completed, which will allow the title to pass.
And then
To Firehouse
CenturyLink
Investment Business.
still owns that little lot in the back.
Pardon me?
CenturyLink still owns that little lot in the back
Yes, it does.
and that beautiful tower
And that beautiful tower,
that
yes.
will reflect sun into your greenhouse,
Pardon?
that will reflect sun into your greenhouse.
No, I don't think it'll reflect, but we had a challenge both in terms of the elevator penthouse as well as the greenhouse to modify our plans to stay out of the cone that we know that microwave beam represents, so that we don't interfere with their microwave backup.
And they have no interest in moving that from the center of town.
They don't seem to express a lot of interest in doing so. However, my understanding of where the optic fiber now stands in terms of providing a backup for the city of Ridgway. It always was fed in one direction, I believe, on the east side of 550 going into Ridgway. Last summer and all through the fall, Clear Networks was bringing the optic fiber that would create the loop to Ridgway all the way up Log Hill from Montrose, down Log Hill, then on the south side of Highway 62, I believe.
I believe it comes down Lena Street, across 62, all the way down to County Road 23,
23.
continues out.
And then on to Ridgway, and I understand they are within blocks of being able to connect the 2 intended lines to be the loop. And that would obviate the need for the tower.
Except that it's 2 different companies.
Except it's 2 different companies, one of which has made very gracious offers to complete the connection. I would hope that at some point in time, those who are funding the optic fiber, investment, complete that loop so that you're not relying on a microwave transmission.
And one of those was recently taken down.
One of them was taken down. We took the initiative and tried to assure that it could be because it was no longer of use. So we took one, CenturyLink at our request took one down. It was, I think a supportive action on their part, and we appreciated it. And I'm sure many people in the town appreciated it as well. And then we took the smaller one that was below, they took and raised it higher to get out of our development rights airspace, if you will. And that microwave beam was much more concentrated. Thank you, Jennifer, than the other one. And we moved it up and out of the way, and they re-registered it. So our hope is that someday in the future, we won't look at the tower.
That the whole thing will go away.
Well, The base won't go away. I've been told that it would be tens of millions of dollars to relocate that hub. We'd love them to allow us to have some ability to create some artistic expression to help make that building go away. We hope they will do that. They were very good to work with, frankly, on creating an opportunity for us to have a construction easement to be able to work on and off of their land, because we literally can't even put in foundations without that approval. And that's been signed and sealed, and on 10 days notice, we can start our project. 10 days advance notice to be on their land.
In the
Thanks for
meantime-
sharing that.
In the meantime, I would commend you for obscuring views of said tower. People in like the park, et cetera.
Yeah, I think people will concentrate.
Work.
Thank you very much. I think people, because the development has been sensitive to how it surrounds the firehouse, the firehouse will be prominent and be the first thing people see, but also the greenhouse to the rear will also be, I think, very eye-catching. I was coming around the corner on 550 recently, and I realized the gap in the trees. One of the things you will see is that graceful greenhouse rising up behind that cupola. So, thanks.
Yeah.
So at some point in the history of Ridgway, the planning commission approved that tower.
Must have.
I don't know that it rested fully with the planning commission, but yeah, I don't know when that was erected.
I don't.
Of course, this was all back before
I
there
think
was
It
fiber.
was even, it was pre, it's certainly pre, certainly pre, probably before John.
It's been a
I
while.
guess it's in 70s, 80s.
So it's before any internet.
Oh, yes. I think my guess would be the 60s or early 70s.
Yeah.
So
Just
what was
based
the
on
purpose
look.
of it? It's not internet.
No,
Communications.
Oh.
microwave relay.
To see you, you're ready.
And the reason it's so critical is emergency services in your array still relies on that as a backup.
I see. Well, this has been informative. Does anyone
Little
else?
history lesson.
Right,
For a
thank
simple-
you.
For a simple property owner request.
Yeah.
Yes.
We appreciate that.
Have any questions or concerns?
I just thank you, Patrick, for explaining all that to us. I did forget that we did approve the height just because of that tower was such an eyesore. So that's good to remember. And also that you are keeping the main structure of the firehouse. I'm really happy about that. And hopefully part of Lucy's garden.
A good part of Lucy's garden, the part that has always been public, will remain. And
Will remain public.
yes, well, it will remain a garden. And the public is certainly going to be invited, because we intend for that to be outdoor dining space as well
Okay,
in the beautiful garden.
wonderful. Thank you. Well, I go ahead and approve. I don't,
Whoa. Are you getting ready to make a motion, Jennifer?
no, I'm just saying but you have to do a public, I don't know if anybody's on public here to talk.
Reminder, this is a public hearing. So.
Ah, yes, thank you. Is there any public that would like, I will open this to public comment. Is there any public that would like to comment? Is there any public present?
There are, there are
A couple people.
there's public
No one speaking.
on Zoom. I don't see any hands. You'd like to speak, please use that.
Please
Raise your
speak
hand
if you would
function.
like to.
I don't see any.
I'm gonna go with no public comment, therefore we will close it. In which case I'm ready for a motion, but I want to remind that person who makes it that we are merely recommending to town council to approve this. We are not approving it ourselves.
So I move that we approve this to go to town council as a replat to combine two separate parcels into one parcel. Sufficient
With staff.
With the staff recommendation
with the staff recommendation.
that both properties shall transfer to one ownership prior to recording.
Okay,
I'll second.
second.
I think we're ready for a vote.
I'm sorry.
You were puzzling over there. I'm like, oh no, we've done something wrong.
Ready? Okay, we're taking a vote. Commissioner Friends. Aye. Aye. Liz.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Nelson.
I,
Chairperson Montague.
Aye.
That's it.
Got it.
Great,
Thank you, Patrick.
we'll get it done.
Yeah.
Thanks, Preston, for your help, and TJ as well. That call was really helpful. I think to both sides.
Yeah.
That we had.
Absolutely.
Okay,
We'll
thanks
be
for
in
that.
touch soon. We'll be in touch soon about the next step.
Yes, and I'll leave you guys to the rest of your business. It looked like a heavy agenda.
Massive, massive.
We have some minutes to approve.
Oh, okay.
yes, and I can go ahead and approve the minutes for February 22nd of 2022.
I'll second.
We're moving right along.
Vote.
I guess so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
All right.
Patrick.
Thank you.
All right.
This is for the minutes. Commissioner Friends. Aye. Lisk.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Nelson.
I,
And I'm sorry, Chairperson Montague.
Aye.
Thank you.
Must be spring break.
Do we have anything else we'd like to discuss? Well, we have TJ here present for this very important meeting.
Well, I have a question. TJ, is this a hologram of you? Or are you actually here?
I believe I'm really here.
Remarkable. Welcome.
I think he's checking it out to consider if he wants to apply for the open position that we still have.
Oh, yeah.
He brought his family
Be
this
pretty
time.
good.
Kids or-
Yeah, it seems we should have taken this opportunity to do some training or something,
Yeah.
but we don't have many people and we didn't plan that. You were coming for an interview that was canceled while you're on your way, I believe. So that position will be re-advertised?
Yeah, so for anyone still on the Zoom, we had scheduled an interview with a candidate for the senior planner position this morning. That candidate had informed the town just yesterday that they had accepted another position. Happy for them, unfortunate for us, we didn't get to vet that individual. So back to the drawing board, we will re-advertise for town planner, senior planner. We will bolster the recruitment efforts, maybe even have to spend a few dollars to boost, on some of those platforms to garner some more interest.
So when you said that we'll advertise for both a town planner and a senior planner,
Yeah, I guess I was thinking out loud, but I mean, we have essentially the same position, senior planner being a little more, I guess, based on our job descriptions, a little more seasoned, if you will, with experience and education levels, et cetera. So we may opt, we have to evaluate it, but we may opt to advertise for both, just depending on who comes in and the experience and their overall experience and background, and where it should fall on either of those job descriptions.
it seems like a good idea, since we've advertised this before, to be open to someone possibly with the education, but maybe less experience. Just a thought.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate the thought.
And then TJ could spend some time bringing them up to speed. I don't know, is there anything at council that got decided that concerns us?
I'm aware of.
So long ago.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't believe there were any public hearings at the last meeting.
Might have been one.
Was there one?
And we can,
Oh, maybe the extension of the preliminary plat for River Park Phase 3. That's right. So Ridgway Light Industrial Phase 3 originally approved, I think, even prior to 2008. Sorry, I don't have those notes in front of me. Has been getting 2-year extensions since that time, and so they've communicated to the town that they are ready to go with meeting the conditions of their preliminary plat approval. The engineering needs to be updated to town standards and specifications, which is kind of the big piece right now. So currently that civil engineering submittal is with Joanne to review to ensure that it meets those standards. So that's where that is at. But I believe that was the only public hearing application that went before town council, and that was purely a extension request.
so the civil engineering refers to the road, Laura Street, that's gonna go through there.
Just to anything that's gonna happen up there. I don't think that was actually, they're actually looking specifically at the light industrial, so it's
Right.
not that lower road. But it's anything that they want to do, and the standards have increased in what we want, just as far as roads or foundations and
Yeah.
buildings and things like that.
Yeah,
So
the utilities.
it's just a matter of making sure that whatever they do is all up to code in that respect.
But I thought that Laura was the front side of that addition to the light industrial. You're saying that because it has alley access, that doesn't necessarily have to be part of it?
It is part of it.
It is part of it.
They're responsible for building out a portion of Laura Street to town standards. So asphalt, curb, gutter.
Basically from that wooden fence is where their property starts, basically Auto Street. Yes.
Yes.
And are you guys, you know what we're talking about out there?
Yes,
So it's
it's
just the
half-
light
it's half.
industrial right now.
Yes.
Nothing's happening with the mixed residential yet,
No, nothing.
which is same owner, different property.
It's not light industrial.
Right.
It's now, yeah, right. It's now zoned mixed residential, but yeah, no firm plans or that we see forthcoming to you currently, but we'll let you know soon.
Yeah, those are all under development, I think, those plans, so.
And Tire Ed Foundation is still in the works and we might see that in the next month or two.
We are hoping to have see, I'm still on the thunder. We are hoping to have their preliminary plat submittal before you all next month. So that'd be April 26th, I think.
Oh, great. Anything else we need to prepare ourselves for or know about?
Not necessarily, but just so that you, like Preston, myself, Joanne, and I don't know if you guys know, we meet monthly to just kind of talk about all the development applications and inquiries and stuff. And that list keeps getting longer and longer. There's just a lot of interest. Tire kickers aren't worth talking about.
But we'll look back and miss meetings like this
Yes.
in the not so near
That's well.
future. Say, oh, remember when we didn't have anything to talk about?
Yeah.
Good to
That
know.
seems natural, right? Like as the summer is coming and the weather's getting nicer
Well,
Yeah, that's a
and
good
they can
point.
dig.
and I just, actually, this might be worthwhile, that we just received the submittal of lot 3 PUD. So,
Across the
yeah, it's
highway?
across the street. Joe Nelson and Jack Young. The reason I bring it up, and I don't know if we've ever had this conversation, in that since it's an official application, it falls under quasi judicial, and ex parte communication now applies to both planning commission and the town council. So since we have an official application and you can't go and talk to people about it. Things like that.
Anyone, it doesn't,
Correct, because the reason is it's a public hearing, quasi judicial action. I don't know, am I saying words that just people don't understand?
no.
So, means you're sitting as judge and jury.
Both
Partial
educated,
decision,
Jennifer and
yeah.
Bill and I, Bill already knew it, but when we started, yeah.
So that's an application that's in. It's the only one we've gotten. We do anticipate a couple more next week.
So that happened rather quickly because was it just last month?
Just last month.
So that's moving along.
I would say-
Well, okay,
Yeah, they got on the horse and submitted for a sketch plan.
Okay.
So, we're in the process of a completeness review and we'll put that before you all when deemed appropriate.
when they have all their things turned in. Does it still have a pond?
I haven't looked at it.
I haven't looked.
The one clarification that I do want to point out that staff, including myself, does not fall under that quasi judicial or ex parte communication. We're here to help you. So if you have questions about that.
So we can ask you about it. We could talk
Correct.
to one other person at a time on the planning commission about it?
No,
Not at all.
the only people you can get facts to staff,
Okay.
right? It's kind of the purview of that. Until we have it here.
And I know this European, I'm sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask a question about that if I can. I wanted to see, I was looking up the ownership of that land that they were building on. And it looked like it was owned from somebody else. Is that Jack that owns the land? Or can you remind me?
On the application, I saw that it was the original owner that had gotten the approval, the plat approval in the first place, but it seems like Jack is in on the development team that's working on it. That's what I was able to figure out.
Right, he's I want to be careful here, not getting too in the weeds with that, but I think Ridgway, good question, Jennifer, Ridgway USA or is I
Yes.
think the owner of the parcel. And currently Joe Nelson, I believe, is authorized agent to explore this.
Okay, so it's the holding
process.
company,
Correct.
correct?
Could
Okay,
you clarify why that's quasi judicial and say was Patrick's also quasi? It
yes.
is.
Yes, anything that has a public hearing.
Okay.
Is quasi.
Okay, so it doesn't matter where it's in the process or the size. of it.
Correct.
It's just that we're making a call on what they could do with their property that makes
Yeah,
it quasi judicial.
So when you're applying rules, regulations, and laws to one specific property,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you're quasi judicial.
So different when we were creating a new landscaping.
Correct. Because that applies to everyone that's legislative.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thanks for the clarification. Does anybody have anything else? I'm kind of out of things to think of.
Sorry, I don't.
No, I hope you do. I mean, you're here.
I want to maybe just follow up a little bit because we heard this conversation today. And I think that we'll probably see this a lot more. That typically what's going to happen is you're going to have a current developer, the current property owner, and then you can have a speculative developer come in and have a third-party agreement with that developer or that property owner that says, hey, we'll enter into a contract that once I reach this certain point in approvals with the town, you'll transfer property to me. And so that's very typical. I don't know that it's so much typical here historically, but it's what we just saw where the agreement with the two property owners is contingent on approvals. We're seeing it probably with Ridgway rural home, not Ridgway rural homes.
Ridgway Land Company.
Ridgway Land Company to build Ridgway, these entities that have agreements behind the scenes. Our interest in this, when it comes up, is making sure that whoever is the current owner has authorized whoever the applicant is to speak on their behalf. And we do that through the application review process.
Because otherwise they could just be wasting our time.
Correct. Correct. And I can't say I'm going to do something on your property without your approval. And then the ownership itself, though, doesn't so much matter in the decision making.
As long as that person has authority and staff
Correct.
confirms that and that
Yep,
proof is in our packet before it comes to us.
that is correct.
Nice work.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And also I was asking those questions because I guess when we approved those variances, the project would tonight or in December of 2019, the project was a lot different than what it is now. And I guess my concern is when we approve things like that, I thought we were approving it for what the project was, and now it's changed. So it's kind of disappointing to see a project that you think is going to happen, and then it kind of changes into something else after it passes the planning commission. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. This is TJ. I'm not sure how to really respond in this case, since this.
I guess the question would be, can the planning commission come back and say, wait a minute, we approved it for this specific thing, you've changed it. Like the lot across the
Yeah.
street were saying you had to go back and start over. You know, it was a long time, but where is that line?
The answer is no, because there was no sort of, in the motion to approve, there was no sort of condition saying that the approval was tied to those specific uses. Good question though, and I agree with TJ. It's a valid concern and, you know, a bummer considering they touted the uses and it's much different now, but with what Mr. O'Leary was trying to convey. It's been 2 years, pandemic, escalating construction prices. He had to ensure it penciled out for him. He's not building on portions of the lot, you know, just to, again, ensure that it pencils out. So,
But the lesson for us is, do we want to be more specific with our approvals so that we would have the ability? I've brought that up recently with timestamps. You know, someone comes back 30 years later and tries to build something and their thing is still good. But then the light industrial has been getting continuances every 2 years. So how is that different than that, other than it was approved at a different time and didn't have a time limit on it? Is that the case?
In that particular case, it's also, there's a code requirement that allows that a preliminary plat is only valid for so many, 2 years.
Was that a permanent plat?
No, so that once you get to final plat or PUD approval, you're fully vested, you have both fully vested rights. And so you've now entitled it, right? You might hear, you know, applicants come up and say, we're just trying to get through the entitlement process. That's a lot of what's happening up in Ridgway River Park as well, where they're entitling the property to be able to sell. Right, so they're coming and rezoning it to be able to make it more marketable. Those are, frankly, I get my red flags go up when I start seeing that stuff, the speculation and stuff. I'm a little bit sideways from that, but I think what happened is that by approving these variances and the conditional use, in general, those approvals run with the land, not a project, not an owner. So those approvals are on that land forever.
So we couldn't necessarily have done something differently.
You can put, as Preston mentioned, we can put conditions on it. We can make sure that the record states exactly what's there. And then that they have to do something that is a lot of places call it public benefit, right? So, okay, we'll allow you to have this conditional use with these conditions, that there's an offset to that impact, public benefit.
So as we're going to be seeing a lot more volume, do we want to advise, as a commission, do we want to discuss or advise staff to put tighter stipulations on these approvals? I don't have that answer. I'm posing that to the commission as something we may want to look into, talk about. Are we even able to, you said we are able to do some things.
good thought. Staff wants to put conditions on those types of approvals, the planning commission and the town council. So, and it's case by case basis. So I think I read you loud and clear. We can certainly make that note as, I think this is a very unique type project.
Right, and I don't have the answer. I'm just posing this question.
Yeah.
But it seems like we could-
And honestly, go ahead.
Well, I think that like we can take the recommendations
Right.
and we can just, extrapolate a bit more detail.
I think it's sometimes
it's
hard to do
appropriate.
during the meeting because it's the people are here, it's overwhelming, there's a lot of conversation, like, are we gonna remember that we want to add those specific things? It's a pretty, we get our packet on like Friday and we're not supposed to discuss it outside of the meeting, so everything happens pretty quickly.
Just from my point of view, we originally approved, as you guys may recall or you may have read, it was a culinary school and some residences and a restaurant. The fact that it's now long-term rental, we can use long-term rental. I'm not too disappointed with that outcome. We end up with, I think, a nice, something nice right near the park. It was a win from, it was somewhat disappointing not to have, the cordon bleu school of Ridgway. But, I mean, I think what the town is getting is good. And that's.
When I'm not upset about
thanks to you
this
guys
project.
if you needed to nudge him to get that outcome, it was a good one. So.
I think that.
Well, my disappointment was just with the, when he brought up the school, the housing was supposed to be for, he had explained the housing was going to be for the employees. And I thought it was great that people could live and work in the same place or in the same town. So and we had approved that height, which I was kind of going back and forth with the height because I didn't think it was necessary, but I'm not disappointed with the project overall, though. I think he did a good job.
When I'm speaking in more general terms, I don't have an issue with this project, but I'm saying more are going to be coming, and do we need to be more critical or more cautious about the approvals that we give,
Yeah,
knowing that
thoughtful.
things can change?
The possibilities, yeah.
And Jennifer, as good as employee housing is live work, the downside to that is you lose your job, you lose your housing.
Yeah,
So that could be a little tricky too.
yeah. But I do agree, like in the future, I guess I didn't realize that we had approved those variances on the land itself and that they stay in place no matter what. So I'm glad I learned that tonight. And yes, I would like to take more precautions, I guess, going in the future to make sure I know what is being approved. And the way it's being approved, I guess I didn't realize it wasn't with the plat.
I'll let you behind the curtain a little bit. There's only so much that we as staff can do in our staff report. We try to tee up questions and discussion. Take
And
the
then we
base
have to take it
questions.
from there. You can't recommend that we make
Correct.
it more strict. So we
Sometimes,
need to know our stuff, so we know what we're able to do.
Yes.
And if we take it too far, you'll reel us in and be like, well, that's a great idea, but you can't do that.
I've done that more than a few times. So yes, it's my job to keep you in between the lanes.
Yeah, so
Maybe it's really about supporting more conversation
yeah,
during the hearing.
Yes.
And maybe out loud more asking, what about if we put a little bit more of a condition on that approval?
yeah,
Right, and just
yeah.
asking that question, and then if there's, it kind of slows that process down. Right, there's not
Yeah.
a need for us to be rushing it.
Well, and we're usually seeing things because, well, either it's a PUD or someone's asking for an exception, a variance, they want something. And so I think it's okay for us to be like, well, if we're gonna give you that thing, we're looking for some reassurance that this is really what's gonna happen on this property, like, it's kind of a gray area. And I would guess that a more seasoned planning commission would know their boundaries on that, and we're gonna try to learn that here quickly.
I will say, at least in my, 12, 13 months working with you all, you guys are quite astute.
Okay, good.
I don't know what happened in those hearings, but I feel pretty confident that the dialogue that we have during the hearings would probably bring up some concerns that we're identifying now and might have ended some of that stuff later. So I guess from what I'm saying there is, I don't know that this is something we need to worry about too much.
Okay, so maybe it's not a big deal, but just maybe be aware of it. So the greenhouse is new? That was there.
It was there.
Okay. I think this was all good conversation. Does anyone have anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Yeah,
Dr. Lewin.
barring no objections. I won't tap it too hard. John gets upset. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Jennifer.
Thanks for taking some extra
Thank
time
you.
to have these conversations. We're not really allowed to do it